to another screencast where this time we'll be discussing microanatomy of bone. And so by the end of this, hopefully you'll be able to identify and describe here the cells associated with the bone tissue. And there are sort of 4 different types of cells here. And then be able to identify and describe the microanatomy of compact bone, but as well also the cancellous bone. So we're going to add cancellous bone here. And this is sometimes also referred to as the Haversian system that is made up of osteons. And so Haversian systems, osteons, these are the functional units here. And then also to explain the role of bone salts and organic matrix in the making of, that helps make the bone flexible as well as hard. So let's get started. In a previous screencast, we had talked about the gross anatomy of bone, and we had talked about the periosteum being the outer sort of covering there. There's this fibrous layer as well as the cellular layer. So we're going to talk here about the cells involved with this today. The compact bone sits just underneath that, and here we see the osteons of these Haversian systems, and these are the circles, right, the little bullseyes that you remember from when we were just doing the connective tissue unit, and you were able to very easily identify bone. Now we're going to look at the details of what that is. And then here we see the endosteum on the inside that is covering the cancellous bone, and so the cancellous bone with the trabeculae. These trabeculae, the bone itself there, is also made up of these the cells and depositing bone tissue there. So let's go a little bit further here and look at this. So the bone is a connective tissue. So let's just take a second and review this. That because of that, you're going to have a cell that is going to be secreting an extracellular matrix. I don't know why I drew two lines there. Secreting an extracellular matrix. Now, bone is unique because the extracellular matrix there is hard and mineralized. Hard and mineralized. And the mineral that's there is a big long word, hydroxyapatite. And this hydroxyapatite here is a calcium-based salt. Right? It's a calcium-based salt. So this calcium ion here is coming, of course, from the blood. So regulation of calcium levels is going to be a function of bone here. And in bone is a place where calcium gets stored, but can also be resorbed from the bone. Right? So again, the cells here are going to be secreting an extracellular matrix. It's going to be hard and mineralized. Bone, however, forms on, or is, as we'll look at in another screencast, bone, all our bones used to be hyaline cartilage. Right? So we have this hyaline cartilage. And the hyaline cartilage cells there, the chondroblasts, will be secreting collagen fibers as well. So what happens is that the bone, this hard mineralized matrix here, will sort of engulf and contain these collagen fibers. So the collagen fibers give the bone, these collagen fibers that are left over from the hyaline cartilage, give the bone some flexibility. Give the bone its flexibility, but the mineralized matrix makes the bone hard here. So what we see in the image here is that here's the bone surface, and this would be the matrix. Right? And we see then osteoblast cells. Right? And these osteoblast cells are, here's your cell here, and then there's these extensions off of the cell. Right? So this is actually one osteoblast cell, and this osteoblast cell is in connection with another osteoblast cell. Right? And so these cells are secreting the mineralized matrix there. Now, after this happens, the mineralized matrix sort of traps the cells in place, and then it traps those osteoblast cells in place, and then they become osteocytes. So I'm throwing around some different terms here, osteoblast, osteocyte. We'll look at that in a second, but just take a minute and see if you can review what we just said there about the cells in the extracellular matrix. So 4 types of cells are going to exist in bone tissue. And I'm not sure that this is in your textbook anywhere. So the first group of cells here are the I don't know what's going on up there. The osteogenitor cells, right, or osteoprogenitor cells. And these osteoprogenitor cells are stem cells that will give rise to, so when the cell divides, you have 2 cells, and this osteoprogenitor cell here will become another osteoprogenitor cell, but then will also become an osteoblast. Right? It will give rise to this osteoblast, right? As well as give rise to osteoclast cells. Osteoclast cells. So then that brings us to the other types of cells. So second type of cells are osteoblast cells. And these osteoblast cells, right, are the building cells, blast, building, making, creating the bone matrix. Right? Osteoclasts, right? Class is to break down, right? And so these osteoclasts will be breaking down bone. And then fourthly, you have osteocytes. Right? And so the osteocytes are mature osteoblasts. Right? So it's the activity of these cells that helps to keep bone living, helps keep bone reforming itself, right? And being a dynamic, coming into a dynamic equilibrium here. So osteoprogenitor cells, osteoblasts, osteoclasts, and osteocytes. So when we look at the cartoon of these things here, we can now see them, right? So here's the osteoblast cells here, and these osteoblasts are going to be laying down a new bone, and you see that these osteoblasts are all around the outside edge of this, and so the osteoblasts lay down new bone matrix here. Now, that new bone matrix is going to then trap the older cells, the older osteoblast cells, which you see here. Right? So this is the older osteoblast cell. Right? And the older osteoblast cell then becomes an osteocyte. Now, this osteocyte is maintaining the bone. The osteoblast is building or laying down new bone matrix being secreted out of here. Right? Then, so this will form. So then, what you'll have happen is that these cells here, and then you'll get right here these osteoblasts. You'll get another osteoblast here, laying down more bone matrix, creating another layer here. So each of these layers, right? So here's one layer, and here's a second layer, and here's a third layer, and here's the fourth layer here. Each of those different layers is called a lamella. Right? Lamella is singular, lamellae is plural here. So you have these concentric lamellae. Right? And again, the tannish brown color here is all mineralized matrix. Now, the extensions of those osteoblast cells, right, form these little canals between the matrix, right? So the matrix doesn't completely cut the cells off from one another, and those little canals are called canaliculi. Right? And the canaliculi are how the osteoblasts and osteoclasts will transfer nutrients to one another, get rid of wastes, etc. And so the canaliculi are these little tiny hairs here, and those hairs again are extensions from one osteocyte to the next, right? And are the remnants of those the osteoblast cells. Right? The last type of cell that we see here then are the osteoclasts, and this osteoclast is a huge cell, and it is multinucleated, right? Sometimes upwards of 40 to 50 nuclei per cell. So these osteoclasts are going to be secreting enzymes, secreting acids out of them that will then dissolve that bone matrix there. that was laid down. So if we look at the micrograph here, and I want you to look at these in class here, so we'll see this. So now you should be able to see under scanning here, so this is only 70x, right? You're able then to see the lamellae, and you're also able to see the canaliculi here. Right? And, oh, one other term, of course, why not? Because it's anatomy, so let's have another term here. The lacunae is the little gap, the little space, right? Lacuna being a singular. So this is like a little lake, and a little place where the osteocytes are going to be. And so the lacunae under the microscope look like real dark, just little spots here. So that actually is an osteocyte. Right? So the lacunae are connected to one another via the canaliculi. So under 1,000x, right, and we have oil immersion in class, so we can you can try to see this and see if you can see this kind of detail here. Right here again is an osteocyte. So the osteocyte is sitting in this, which is the lacuna. Right? So there's the lacuna. This is the little gap, and then all of this is going to be the bone matrix out here. So this is all bone matrix identified there, and then here's this little extension of the cell here, and there's another extension of that osteocyte right there, and that's the canaliculus, singular, canaliculi, plural. Okay? So under the microscope, you want to try to identify those things. So that brings us to this then. So let's come back up a little bit and look at a compact bone. So again, here we have a section through the long bone. We took a section right there. Here's the periosteum we peeled away. Here is the compact bone. And we see now the lamellae, right? And those are the concentric lamellae. In the center of the lamellae and the compact bone, you also have a blood vessel, right? And that blood vessel is at the center of this Haversian system, is at the center of that osteon. And so we call this circle here, this whole thing, an osteon, and that's an osteon that's been sectioned, and here's an osteon that's been sectioned. So if we take a little cut out of that osteon and remove it here, we're now able to see again. So here are the lamellae, right? So A, B, C, D, those are the lamellae. I'm wondering if you could maybe pause here and tell me which one is the oldest lamella, which one would be the newest lamella. Between the lamellae, we have the osteocytes, right, trapped in their little mineralized or matricide lakes here. So there's the lacuna. Right, it's sitting in the lacuna. We have the extensions from those osteocytes. Right, these are the canaliculi. Right. This would be the central Haversian canal here without the blood vessel in it. Okay. And again, here's that mineralized hydroxyapatite matrix. If we look at spongy bone, if we look at the cancellous bone, and we'll do that on the next slide here. Oh, before we go on there, I just saw one other thing I wanted to point out. So the Haversian canals, right, are the ones that are running along the long axis. Right? We see then these ones that run across the long axis, and those are the Volkmann's canals. So the Haversian canals, the way I remember this is that when I make an H, I need to go and make that first. Right? So these are the Haversian canals running along the long axis. Right? And then the Volkmann's canals are just the other ones, the ones that go across. Right? And they contain blood vessels. So if we look at the trabeculum, right? We look at this little section here through the trabeculum of the cancellous bone. We're going to see the same pattern, right? Here's this very same thing going on here, but you don't see them very well organized because there are lots of different planes, right? And I think the best way to see this is to look at the model in class, right? This is a big plastic model that we have that you can see this relatively easily on. Okay. This is just a little bit about how the Haversian canals form. Take a look at that. It makes sense. I don't want to waste any more time, or I don't want to waste. I don't want to spend any more time on this at the moment, so we can look at this in class. Okay. So hopefully you've been able to now identify and describe here the cells associated with the bone tissue. And again, we had 4 different cells. A little bit about the microanatomy of compact bone as well as the cancellous bone. And then the role of the bone salts, that hydroxyapatite, right, and the organic matrix here with the collagen fibers that are in there. Okay, thanks for listening. Bring your questions to class.